to one, so pretty soon should be
All
done.
right. Whoever isn't muted, please mute.
We have 4 open houses.
All right. So I don't need to advocate on the short-term gun control. There's so much conversation about that. But I want to talk about what I believe is the real long-term solution to it. And even though it's not the sexiest political issue around, I think it is truly the reason that we're in this mess. And that is money, more specifically, the public financing of campaigns. So long as the people who are against gun control are taking money from the NRA and gun manufacturers and the gun lobby, we're going to be in the stalemate that we are.
I'm gonna pretend I'm on this.
I honestly think that the cutting off the money and the incentive of politicians to block gun control is likely the long-term solution. So as I said, it's not the sexiest, it's not the Roe versus Wade issue, but it is, I think, at the heart of a lot of the problems that has caused the division in our country. So that's what I want to say about that. Obviously, we'll have some more discussion later on, probably in the meeting. I just have a few reports to make, and then I'm going to move right into our program. First report I have is I want to report on a very successful event on May 14th for our endorsed candidate, Burke Stronsky, who is running for district attorney. I estimate there were about 40 people who came, including a lot of new members. It was a great meeting. It was an in-person meeting and a wonderful exchange between the candidate and our club members, and I think highly enlightening. So it was very encouraging to see that kind of turnout. Thank you for those of you who came. The next report I have is on May 31st, which is next week. I believe it's next Tuesday. The California Attorney General is going to appear at an event in the Coachella Valley. It is a free event. It is not a fundraiser, although everyone, of course, is welcome to make donations to Rob Bonta's campaign. If you want to go, the people that are running it, it's in conjunction with the Democratic Women of the Desert and some other organizations. They'd like a head count. If you plan on going, will you please send me an email to president@desertdemocrats.org and say, I plan on coming, and how many of you, whether you're bringing a friend or a spouse or both, to the meeting. That would be very helpful. Once again, it's a great opportunity to meet a very important part of our government, and it's free. There's no ticket or anything. Just let me please know if you're coming so I can let the organizers know. Upcoming elections, we are hard up against the primaries. I'm going to defer for an election update to our regional director, Ellie, who can tell you, I'm sure she knows what to say, what's going on the front of the election front here in the Coachella Valley and in our area.
Well, I thank you, Stephen, very much. And I will tell you, my friends, that I haven't seen this kind of excitement for a midterm in a very long time. It's quite exciting what's going on. We have some pretty dynamic young candidates. Certainly Will Rollins is leading the field on that. We've got Christy Holstich. And I'll tell you something else. There's some really exciting stuff happening with some of our city council races. Now, those won't, the final date on those for filing is in August, but I think we're going to have some very interesting things happening with that. I also want to give a shout out to people like Marcy Maxwell, who and with Julie Bornstein has just been doing a terrific job turning things, believe it or not, in Indian Wells. We haven't really paid much attention to Indian Wells, but by golly, Julie Bornstein and Marcy Maxwell are They've been doing postcards, they're getting responses, and it's quite exciting. I can also tell you very quickly on the postcard side of things, we've got a project coming up. It's being headed up by our wonderful Priscilla Richardson, Pam Simpkins, Janet Acker, David Middleton, Rick Weingard. This is going to be a major postcard project that will take place once the primaries have been completed. We'll have more details for you on that as we move forward, but I can just tell you, get your pens ready, make sure they've got ink, and start practicing with your hands, because we've got a lot of work to do and we're going to do it. I personally think we're going to have one heck of a turnout for this primary. And I think we may see some real change that'll take place in November. So I will have more information for you. The e-board is taking place in July in Los Angeles. I will be attending the California Democratic Party e-board, which is in July 9, 10, and 11, I believe it is. So I'll have more information for you at next month's meeting, but things are looking very, very good, and we're very excited. The headquarters is now open. It's not open today. We are taking the holiday, but from beginning on Tuesday, we're going to be open as we go to in the election cycle. So thank you, Stephen, and thank you everybody for the concerns.
All right, moving along as quickly as I can. There's one more event coming up I want to mention. The March on June 11th, there is March for Our Lives protest. This is a nationally organized event, but there will be local versions of that. If you want to make a note, marchforourlives.com, marchforourlives.com/March22. And that's not March the 22nd, that's March in 2022. Take a look at that and find your local march and get out and show some support for what's going on with your feet, in-person support. I was gratified at the NRA convention that there was a large protest outside of it. I was wondering whether anyone would show up, and I was, of course, completely incredulous at the things said by Mr. Cruz and Mr. Trump yesterday in light of what happened. Finally, very briefly, we have one person I need to introduce. This is a local candidate who's running for the Palm Springs City Council, Jeff Bernstein. I told Jeff he could speak briefly, and Jeffrey, I do mean briefly.
Okay.
Just say briefly hello, and you certainly can come back again and talk more about yourself. But right now, I just want you to have an opportunity to say hello to Dems of the Desert.
Okay. Hello, Dems of the Desert. My name is Jeffrey Bernstein, and I am running for Palm Springs City Council District 2, and the elections are in the fall. And I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I look forward to coming back to speak.
Okay. Well, you can talk in another 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, I am a local business owner. I own a store. I've been very involved in Palm Springs in community groups and the city for the last 12 years. This is the first time I've run for any office, but I've had a very good showing of support so far. And I've been actively involved in a number of different charities and local business groups and our Measure J Commission. So I am hopeful that I can give back to the city and be one of the few working people who is actually on city council.
Okay, well, thank you. People look up Jeffrey's campaign, take a look. I wanted to introduce you, and I'm inviting you back again so you can talk at greater length. Thank you very much. I see Matt and I see Tracy. Is Will here?
Will is unfortunately not here. He is on the side of the road with AAA right now. But if he makes it back home by the time we're still speaking, then he'll hop on. But yeah, triaging on the side of the road right now. But as soon as he's done, he'll be able to hop on. Maybe.
Well,
if he
I hope
gets through it.
It's his car, not himself, right?
Yes, yeah, just his car. He actually broke down last night on the way to an event, and I picked him up on the way, and we had to push his car up. It was a whole ordeal, but yeah, he's out there now and should be joining if he can make it.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Will, and then Tracy, or if you or Matt want to before we hopefully he rejoins us. Will is our endorsed candidate. He is running for a seat which did not exist. It's a newly districted congressional seat. I'm personally very impressed with the guy. He's a real superstar. And as much as I am impressed with Will in pretty much every respect, that's how much I dislike his opponent or his apparent opponent. Ken Calvert stands for everything I think that this club and most of the people here stand against. He voted against approving the election of Joe Biden. He is a Trumpist. He is anti-abortion. He is pro-gun. He takes money from the NRA. The list goes on and on. He's pretty the poster boy for all the causes and things that most of us oppose. Will, on the other hand, is proud of the F grade he got from the NRA. Calvert got an A. That should tell you everything that you need to know. So Tracy or Matt, do you want to talk about what's going on in your campaign and what these folks need to know before the star shows up?
Absolutely. I will. I'll give a quick campaign update in case he can't join us, and then I'll pass it over to Christopher from my team, the volunteer coordinator, to let us know. We've got a couple upcoming great public events, and volunteer opportunities. So he'll pitch some of those. But yeah, as it stands, we are 11 or 12 days out from primary day. On Will's campaign, we just crossed $1 million raised last week for the entire campaign. Which is really exciting. Obviously breaks any previous records of any Democrat to have run against Ken Calvert before. Some exciting new endorsements, adding to the list of, Senator Boxer, Lieutenant Governor Lainey Kounalakis, Congresswoman Jackie Spear, Congressman Raul Ruiz, and Mark Takano. We've added Adam Schiff last week. Really excited to add Adam Schiff to the list, especially his work, on the intelligence and the judiciary and just the there's no clearer narrative than someone who prosecuted those who attacked the U.S. Capitol, running against someone who lifted up, incited those riots, and then defended them after, just minutes after, or hours after, rioters injured 140 police officers. Ken Calvert voted against certifying the results of the election, and Will was a key component in making sure that those people saw justice. And so, a great bookend to Ken Calvert's long 30-year corrupt career. Added a couple new unions this week, and then also Congressman Seth Moulton and his PAC, and then also Pete Aguilar from California as well. So excited to add those three to the list this week. The DCCC recently added to this district, the new California's 41st, to its battleground list. It means that's one of the races that they expect and will invest in to flip from red to blue this year. So that was really exciting. Got some new polling in the district from a third-party poll that we did not pay for that put Calvert's reelect number at 17%. Voters in the new district, only 17% of them right off the bat would vote to reelect Ken Calvert, which is great for Will. He's going to turn out Democrats in the Coachella Valley, in Corona, Lake Elsinore, Canyon Lake, and then also fight with his profile to get some of those no party preference voters who, maybe voted Republican in the past, have mixed voting histories, but just know how extreme Ken Calvert is after that vote after January 6th, and won't stand for that.
Where do you need the most help? Is it phone banking, postcard writing? What kind of help is most critical to your campaign right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Christopher, do you want to talk a little bit about volunteer opportunities we have coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. We've added a bunch of new volunteer opportunities for phone and text banking so that we can really try to mobilize that vote as we're coming into, it's 10 days until the primary election. So we're really trying to push the gas on phone and text banking. We're also looking to see if we can add some other opportunities so that we can really, really push the gas pedal down and really make sure that we get people returning their ballots, because that is the biggest issue, is that people are too busy, are not turning in their ballots. And that's really what we're trying to just get people to return their ballots for the June 7th election. So I will also post my contact information here. It also has our campaign website and our Mobilize link that will have all of our volunteer opportunities there, and anything that we might add in the future, in the next couple of days, and even after the primary. You can always come back to this website there. You'll have all of the opportunities that are in Palm Springs here and across the rest of the district. As you can see, I have our lovely district map behind us. So we have a lot of work to do activating all of this. We want to make sure that we give our best go as we come up.
How are you reaching the NPP and kind of the folks in the middle, the famous undecided voters? How are you going about reaching them?
Yeah, I mean, and for the opportunities between now and the primary, it's about turning out those voters who are most likely to vote in our primary. And so we're mostly, all of our focus, if you come out to phone bank, you come out to text bank, you're going to be texting Democrats who have a great Democratic voting history in the primary. And so once we get through the primary, a lot of that is going to be that crucial face-to-face connection. We're going to be hosting tons of public events, town halls, doing town halls from Corona to Menifee, all the way to Palm Desert, to Palm Springs, Indian Wells, doing events that are public, that people can come to, because I think that's going to be key to our path to victory in the general. It's going to be about making people change their mind. Over there in the Inland Empire, people have had Ken Calvert on their ballot for 30 years. Making them make a decision that they have not before, it's going to take that face-to-face interaction, and that's public events, texting, phone banking, canvassing, hearing from neighbors, that's postcarding, hearing from neighbors in your neighborhood that they're supporting Will instead of the incumbent. That's how we're going to reach. And then hopefully, I think Will's profile does a lot of that work for us as well. Just, he's worked with law enforcement in this district for the last 5 years. This isn't over the entirety of Riverside County, making sure constituents are safe of Ken Calvert's when he wasn't doing his job. And so that's going to be a key part of Will's profile to carry some of those no party preference voters.
All right, continuing with my act here to fill our time productively while we're waiting for Will. We also have somebody from Congressman Ruiz's campaign here, Griffin, and Griffin's very easy to find. If you look for somebody that's about half a foot taller than everybody else, you will find Griffin in any crowd. Griffin, do you want to talk about, speaking of, while we're on the subject of U.S. congressional elections, do you want to talk about a little bit about Congressman Ruiz's campaign, where that is, how it looks, and what people can do?
Of course. Thank you so much, Stephen. I'll keep it brief, but my name is Griffin, in case you haven't met me yet. I am the Deputy Field Director for Dr. Raul Ruiz for Congress. We're in the new 25th Congressional District, as many of you know, which includes Desert Hot Springs, Cat City, Indio and Coachella, as well as Imperial County and the Hemet, San Jacinto, Banning, Beaumont area. So we have a large district, new voters who are not familiar with the congressman. So we're really starting to reach out and getting our name out there for the primary. We're the only Democrat running. There are 6 Republicans, one more crazy than the next. So we really need to make sure that Democrats go out and vote, because our district is a lot more Democratic than it once was, which is great. But so we need to make sure Democrats vote, because when Democrats vote, we win. So we're hosting a number of phone banks. I've seen some people in this meeting who were at some of our phone banks this week, so thank you so much. And right after Memorial Day weekend, we're going to really go all out. We're going to host phone banks and text banks nearly every single day until the election. And we're also partnering with Christy Holstich's campaign, as well as Senator Alex Padilla, to get the word out and to make sure we reach as many voters as possible. So I will, in the chat, put our Mobilize link for our upcoming events. And so you can sign up with more information. I'll put my information in there as well, so you can reach out to me directly if you have any questions. So thank you so much for having me, and I'll be around.
Well, Griffin, I have a question about the new district
Yes.
that you guys are in. I know that if you look at it, it's a strange shaped district, like many of them are, and it goes far up north. I mean,
yes.
It's not a geographically, I call it geographically contiguous kind of district. So there's a lot of people in parts of the new district that have never heard of Congressman Ruiz. So my question is, are you doing something? I mean, there's also a lot of people in Indio who are very familiar, around
Right.
the Eastern Valley, who are very familiar with Congressman Ruiz. So are you making a special effort to kind of introduce yourself to people that may not be familiar with him?
Absolutely. That's our main focus at the moment. Fortunately for us, the California's 25th district actually has about 75% of the population from the 36th district. So 75% of the people in the district have already been represented by Congressman Ruiz. The new parts of the district include Imperial County, which is a border county in the most southeastern part of the state, as well as that upward part follows the Colorado River all the way up to Needles, California. That's the only city within that long stretch going upwards is Needles, California. It's a small town of about 2,000, 3,000 people. So we're focusing on those populations, Imperial County and Needles. Those are the populations that aren't familiar with the congressman. So we're reaching out and really doing our get out the vote efforts a lot there as well. So reaching out and doing more introductory work. So for the Coachella Valley and Hemet, San Jacinto, it's more of reminding voters to return their ballot because they're all familiar with the congressman, while in Imperial, it's more introducing them to him and all the work he's done over the last 10 years and how it would benefit them. So that's our phone banks are too focused. So we have the get out the vote in the Coachella Valley, Hemet, San Jacinto area. That's more of reminding voters to go out and vote. And then in Imperial, it's more of reaching out to Democrats, introducing them to the congressman, and then making sure they get out and vote as well. But overall, the districts, the 36th district and the new 25th district, there's a lot of overlap. More than 3/4 are the same. So there is some of that, of reaching out to new voters, but it's not as intensive, I guess.
All right. And my understanding is that Congressman Ruiz has endorsed Will Rollins. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so
Well, at the end of the redistricting process, we were watching it very closely, and the congressman was really upset that the communities of Palm Springs, Palm Desert, the cities he's represented for about a decade now, he no longer gets to represent. And so when the new district formed and there were multiple Democratic candidates who were running, he took the process of endorsing very seriously, and he looked very closely at all the candidates. And by the end, he was confident that Will is the candidate he wants to support. And fingers crossed and knock on wood. And as we enter the general with Will versus Ken Calvert, we'll do everything in our power to help Will overcome that election and become the congressman in that area, and hopefully build a partnership so the Coachella Valley can get dual representation. Beforehand, it was just Congressman Ruiz advocating for the Valley. Now we have the opportunity to do 2 congressmen, which would be fantastic. It would bring a lot more opportunities and just be great for the area. So we're gonna, especially as the campaign goes on, we're gonna do everything in our power to help Will's campaign succeed.
Steve Brooks, you had your hand up. Do you want to ask something or say something?
I did want to ask earlier about Will Rollins. I was just curious about the polling as far as, how far is the third person down the list? As far as, the top 2, making it to the top 2, I guess is what I'm wondering about. How hard is that going to be?
For sure. So we, when you take just Will and Calvert, we are initially up 1 point. And then when voters hear about Ken Calvert's troubled past, and I won't get into it on this Zoom call, but you can Google an incident in the 90s and some self-dealing in real estate in the early 2000s, where he took earmarked federal highway dollars, bought up plots of land, earmarked federal highway dollars to go buy those plots of land, and then turned those plots of land around for a profit. Widely reported in the LA Times. No idea how he's still in office. So that poll put us up 10 points after those negatives in the primary. Just doing positives on everyone running in the primary, we are up 14 points over our next closest competitor. And that poll kind of, in polling like that, when you give everyone all the positive information, it assumes that both candidates are communicating at the same level, informing the same amount of voters the same amount. And that's not the case in this primary. We've out-communicated with our next closest opponent by about 4-1 in paid communications, and we have a ground operation that dwarfs theirs. And so I would say that 14 points is hopefully the minimum for the margin I would expect in this primary.
Okay. All right, Steve, does that answer you? Okay. Does anybody else? We've got reps from 2 congressional campaigns. I'm sorry. Here. Does anybody else in the club want to ask any questions about either of them?
I have a question for Matt.
Okay.
Where does Sharina show up in that polling?
She is the next closest opponent. So she was the one that's 14 points down behind us in that poll. In that primary poll.
What if we come up with 2 Democrats? Right?
You won't.
Oh, you got me a butt call.
Yeah.
It could be because of the 2-party system, but I would bet a lot that Calvert's at the top, and then it's a competing for the Democrats. But hey, I would love that to go to November without there being any opportunity for Ken Calvert. I think Bob Garrett is unmuted. Yeah, without any chance of Calvert being the representative for this district, that would be great. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, that was the fear when Senator Melendez filed, where it was going to be 2 Republicans splitting and 3 Democrats splitting the Democratic vote. And that's when the next closest primary opponent, Brandon Mosley, dropped out and endorsed Will Rollins because he wanted there to be no odds. And yeah, Brandon was selfless and an incredible decision. And obviously we'll be really supportive of whatever he does in the future, because that was just took a lot. That was selfless. And so that was really great to see. And that was to make sure that we didn't have 2 Republicans at the top of the ticket. And I would credit Brandon with the reason that Senator Melendez, even though there were reports about how she forgot to file or something, I would credit Brandon Mosley with the reason that Senator Melendez dropped out. She didn't see a path and just dropped out after Brandon endorsed Bill.
You know, she got elected as the better of 2 Republicans. I have to vote for her or another Republican.
Yeah, that's
not elected. I think I think she for her. I'm not sure.
Kim Floyd has a hand up. Yes, Kim.
Yes, I'm wondering when and if there's a point where we would paint every identifiable Republican official or candidate as Trumpian, as part of this treasonous problem that we have in this country.
Well,
I mean,
there's no question that Calvert fits that
No, they're not all.
description to a T. Mitt Romney does not, for example. I haven't.
Does Liz Cheney.
I went to high school with Mitt Romney. I've known him all my life. So, I mean, he does not. I mean, he's very, I mean, he's Republican mostly on economic issues, but on social issues, as far as I can tell, he's nothing like what you'd call Trumpian, but too many of them. I mean, there's more Ted Cruz's and Calverts than there are Mitt Romneys, obviously. So
let me just mention, I'm really talking about local candidates who have been Trump delegates who and have not spoken out on the issues that we're talking about in terms of that what happened on January 6th. I mean, how can you continue to be a Republican and not speak out about that issue some way, someplace? That makes no sense to me. And it seems to me, I think it's a political strategy is really what I'm asking about. Is there a point where you say, okay, I know that this guy provided a lot of money to Trump, thousands and thousands of dollars.
I can give you my opinion, which is sometimes informed. My opinion is that what keeps most of these people that you're discussing silent until recently was fear of retribution by Trump, who had a vice grip on the Republican Party. I think that fear is abating now. I think people are coming to see, in light of the recent primaries, that Trump's power may not be as great as they thought it was, but there's still a lot of people who are, to put it in plain English, afraid to cross him. They're afraid to cross him because they fear the consequences of some kind of retaliation against him. So instead of coming out against him, they remain silent. That's my opinion. I mean, everyone else, I'm not right about everything a lot of the times. So if anybody else has any opinion about that, chime in. But that's why I think people who have given and now see Trump kind of receding don't speak up. Fear. Because if he were to get nominated again in 2024, he's going to regain a lot of his power, and they're afraid of what he might do to them. That's just, Matt, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in this race, Ken Calvert's made it really easy for us. He labels himself as a Trumpian. That's the quote, the endorsement he's most proud of when asked about it at a Republican primary town hall. That is the endorsement that he is the most proud of having. Voted against certifying the results of the election, joined the Texas amicus brief, and just time and time again has had chances to be on the side that, the side of the future, the side of democracy, and has turned down those choices.
Griffin, are any of the Republicans running in your race Trumpians or appear to be of that ilk?
Yeah, so so there are 6 Republicans. Of the 6, I would classify, none of them have said explicitly, like, we are Trump Republicans, at least not that I'm aware of, but I would classify about 4 of them as Trump Republicans, and all 4 of them are the ones who are polling the highest out of all 6. The 2 who are, as I guess you would call them, traditional Republicans, are near the bottom of the list. And one of our opponents, there is another doctor who's running from Imperial County, from the city of Brawley. His claim to fame is that he wrote a book with another doctor advocating hydrochloroquine and ivermectin as miracle cures for COVID. And for his fundraisers, he's gotten appearances from Michael Flynn and has the endorsements of individuals like Sean Hannity and other big time Trump allies. So none of them have explicitly said, like, we are Trump allies, but it's clear from their behavior and some of the policies they're introducing that they are. And that's why, we're not taking this race for granted, because we need to make sure that these type of individuals don't get anywhere near any sort of position of power, especially now.
But he's got a great pillow, right?
Yes, it's good that in the past he's been on the target list, the Republican target list, I think nearly every single election. When he first won in 2012, I believe the district was like a Republican district. It was R+4 or 5, and then it became D+2, so slightly more Democratic. Now this year it's unique, as it's a lot more Democratic. I believe it's D+11, D+12. So we're feeling more confident, but we never take anything for granted. We always treat every election, regardless of what the odds say, as if it's a neck and neck race. And we're going to treat this, especially given the individuals who are running, we're going to continue to do that moving forward.
All right. Gerald, is that your raised hand? You have to unmute yourself. Turn your mute off.
How about now?
There you go. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, someone earlier said that we should identify in particular, those Republicans who are basically supporting insurrection, January 6th, and Trump being very Trumpian. Particularly list them. I think we need to go on the offensive, not merely say we're going to win the election. We're going to identify this group that's basically neo-fascist group that wants to take our freedoms away. And I think we, as a strategy, what we do is exactly in terms of strategic maneuvering, but I think it would be an added benefit for all Democrats running in this election that the population, that the people who are going to vote, know who the bad guys are, who are the evil people, who are the neo-fascists.
Kim, are you still here? I see that your name's here.
Yes. Yeah. I'm here.
Are you, you want to name names here of any of the people that you were referring to? I think that's what Gerald's asking.
No, I was really asking the question about strategy for the people who are running for office. It seems to me they're the ones that have to think about those kinds of questions. And I'm just putting it on the table because I know that we could make a list, and some of them are current office holders in our cities. Some of them are major funders for Trump. They live in our communities, but I'm not a strategist, so I'm just asking the question.
All right. Well, as Matt said, in Calvert's case, it's a no-brainer. The guy,
Stephen?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to answer the question, if I may, from Gerald and from Kim, and they're pointing out to identify the people that support the guy from Mar-a-Lago. I don't like saying his name. I'm trying to cut back on my amount of swearing. But I must say that here's the problem. Not every Republican supports him, number one. Number two, we cannot win elections with just Democrats. We have to engage, we have to get the declined estates to vote for our person, whoever that is and what office they're running for. The problem we have is that even some of the declined estates, many of the declined estates are tired of negative politics. They're tired of the yelling and the screaming and the name calling and everything that we get from the Mar-a-Lago person. So I think the strategy, as much as I agree with you that it would be nice to identify them, the problem is we have to win an election. And the way we win an election is to go after not just the Democrats, but the declined estates. And in some cases, those Republicans who have some brain matter left in their skulls. So to me, that's the strategy. If you go after and name names and point out all of that, are you alienating people that might be willing to listen to what you have to say? And what you have to say in the case of Will Rollins and Congressman Ruiz is a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of positive ways that they're going to win this election. Just my opinion. I've been around a while. I see Will's on. Yay, our guy's here. So
really? Should I let him in the room? Oh.
Give him a few minutes.
Will, are you here? I don't see.
I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Did you get your car fixed?
Yeah, I did. I just got dropped off by the tow truck driver. So I'm so sorry that I'm late, but obviously the car is getting a lot of use. So
Well, we've been talking a great deal about your campaign, but we haven't heard from you. So obviously, I'm sure you have something to say about the events of the week here. So I'm just going to open it up for you and go ahead and fill up the rest of our time here.
Sure, Stephen, thanks for having me, and thanks to the Democrats of the Desert as always for your support, and thank you to everybody on the call for really helping out the campaign. And of course, the past couple weeks have been horrible. There have been some really horrific events that have happened in Buffalo and Texas, obviously this week. The two common threads in both of these events that I think we should be mindful of: law enforcement was aware of both of the shooters in advance. In the case of Buffalo, there was a threat made a year ahead of time. Law enforcement responded to. There was a red flag law on the books in New York that wasn't used. In the case of the Texas shooter, the police were called, according to the Associated Press, a couple of times to respond to his house when he got into domestic disputes with his mother. And yet both of these people were able to buy weapons of war. And look, 90% of the American public wants that to change. And the Republican Party ignores 90% of the American public at their peril. This district in particular, 90% of the constituents here do not want the NRA to control our legislation. Ken Calvert's gotten more money from the NRA than any sitting member in Congress in California from 1998 to 2016. He's voted against universal violent criminal history checks, and he's even voted to make it easier to loosen registration on interstate firearm transactions. So it's not even just he won't vote for new legislation, it's that he wants to weaken the current legislation that does exist, which obviously is insufficient to prevent massacres like the ones that just happened these past 2 weeks in the United States. So look, it is important that all of us show up in June and in November. And I'll repeat an ask that I've made of folks before, which is tell 5 people what happened in redistricting who aren't on this Zoom. Tell 5 people who are on the Zoom to turn in their ballots. And I'll pivot to a campaign update and what makes me optimistic about both June and November. So, and Matt may have shared some of these, but I want to repeat a couple that I think are crucial. One, as of May 10th, 2022, so this is basically 3 weeks old, Democrats now have a registration advantage in California's 41st congressional district. This is the first time in the history of Ken Calvert's tenure in Congress that he is facing an electorate that is now more Democratic than Republican. So a once in a generation pickup opportunity. And that change happened 3 weeks ago. I think by November, if you look at the trend in the change in voter registration, Democrats will probably have a couple thousand voters at least in registration alone in this new congressional district. And I think this is a response from the electorate that we're seeing to a party that has become so radically to the right as to be entirely untenable to the vast majority of the American public. That's why 14,000 Republicans left the party after January 6th. It's why more Republicans are continuing to leave the party and more people are starting to register as Democrats or at a minimum, independents and no party preference voters. So that's an important piece of information that I really wanted to share is we now have the advantage. That advantage will grow going into November. We should be optimistic because we are going to win in November and we're going to win June 7th too. Another piece of data that I wanted to share with the group, we've got some data back from the early ballot returns. So a lot of folks still haven't sent them in, but of the ones who have, Democrats have a 16-point edge in the returns. So I think that's a great sign for what the party has been doing and also the momentum that Democrats broadly have and for how fired up people are in this congressional district to return their ballots for June 7th, which historically midterm turnout drops, as everybody knows. Midterm primary ballots are particularly low. But in this case, Democrats are having a 16-point edge in registration. So the Republican voters in this district are not as motivated as we are to return their ballots so far. And I think that's a very good sign for not only June, but also November. And again, just really want to reiterate how much I need your help as we go into June 7th. We're looking really good for the primary, but we don't want to take anything for granted. We want to make sure that we get people to return their ballots if they haven't done it. And I also wanted to just let everybody know that next Thursday, we are going to have an official campaign office opening in Palm Springs. So the office is on Palm Canyon. And Matt, and I think if Christopher's on too, if you all could share that information in the chat. And if you are interested in volunteering to help us out with whether it's canvassing or phone banking or texting, we're going to include that information in the chat too. And I could really use your help these next couple of weeks, because not only do I want to win the primary, but I want to beat Ken Calvert and finish first out of that top 2. And I also think the higher that vote total gets, the more likely it is that that momentum just continues through November, because he has never been as vulnerable as he is now. And I know that I will beat this guy in November with your help. And so just want to thank everybody again for all of your incredible support and your financial contributions. Matt might have mentioned, we just outraised Calvert. This was as of Thursday, head to head in the pre-primary FEC reports, which you can go and look at online. That is the first time in history any Democrat has ever outraised him head to head in a reporting period. So that was another record that we broke, and we're at almost 1.1 million, I think now, raised for the whole congressional cycle. So just want to extend my gratitude again to the group, and happy to chat and take any questions that folks might have.
I'll start out with one question, Will. You weren't here when I made this comment, but I talked, of course, about what happened in Texas, and the obvious short-term solutions are strict gun control laws and background checks and all the things were being discussed. But I thought the longer-term solution to both the gun issue and so many other issues is the notion of public financing of campaigns, because the reason these politicians like Calvert and Cruz and McConnell, they're all taking money from the gun lobbies and the NRA, and getting money out of politics. I mean, that's a particular issue that I like to talk about. Do you agree that's a long-term solution to not only the gun problem, but pretty much a lot of the problems that we have today?
Yes,
Okay.
100%. I mean, I think you also look at the trend in the way that campaigns are financed now, and the wealthiest 10% of Americans are responsible for something like 80% of all campaign finance contributions. And then that's even without the corporate PAC contributions, which of course, unfortunately, now can be essentially unlimited because of Citizens United. So even when you have really strong Democratic candidates and strong, frankly, even strong Republican candidates, no matter how much those candidates might raise from individual contributors, because of the rules around independent expenditures and unlimited spending, we're in a situation where the country is being governed by corporate special interests, the NRA, and it is so destructive to our democracy. And I can tell you that when I am in Congress, I will be pushing for those kinds of long-term structural reforms, because it is infecting our democracy in so many different ways, including on our inability to get basic gun safety legislation done, even when 90% of all Americans want it.
Right. Well, I'm very happy to hear you say that. It's been dark money is a big problem. Dark money and just Citizens United in general. Okay. Anyone have questions for our superstar candidate here?
Yeah, I've got a question. Will Rollins, first of all, thank you very much for being here with us. This is Dennis and Laverne Sheehan. Looking ahead just a little bit, just anticipating things, would your campaign consider debating Ken Calvert? And if so, what issues might you think he would hone in on? As an example, the only strength that I think he might talk about is length of time in the Congress, which could also be seen as a weakness. But what do you think he might try to say in a positive vein in any debate with you, should you get to that type of technique? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to require a lot of creative thinking on my part, because I haven't heard him do anything other than complain about Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and offer zero substantive solutions of his own. So yes, we would love to debate him, and we certainly are hoping that the press will push him to do that, because historically, as many of you probably know, he's refused to debate any Democratic challenger. And so we're hopeful that because of the polling showing that I'm beating him in the new lines, and if I can get out of that top two and potentially pass him, I think he'll be in a position where he will have no choice but to meet in a forum face to face. And then I think it's on me as a candidate to challenge him to point to his successes in this district and how he has actually delivered for the families in Riverside that make between $67,000 and $100,000 per year, who are seeing their costs rise, who have seen their tax burden actually increase, especially when you look at the lack of wage growth over the last 30 years, all of which has occurred while he's been in Congress, regardless of who's controlled all branches of government during that time. And he's got to answer very specific questions about what accomplishments he can point to, because I don't think he has them. And I think I have specific plans for the future that actually will improve the quality of life for people who live in Riverside County. Why is he voting against millions of dollars in funding for the 15 corridor? Why is he voting against millions of dollars in funding to expand Bundy Road in Menifee? Why is he voting against Coachella Valley Rail? Why is he voting against expanding healthcare access for hundreds of thousands of people in this district? And why did he just vote against legislation that was designed to increase access to baby formula? I mean, these are votes that are completely partisan nonsense. And it makes, and even in 2017, when he voted for the Trump tax cuts, right? The biggest state to benefit from those tax cuts was Wyoming. If you live in Southern California, you need that state and local income tax deduction. And we had a Republican who didn't care what the effect was on Southern California families because he wanted to serve Trump, not his constituents in Riverside. And so I really hope that we can get him to actually debate. And I hope that everybody can, I always tell folks, like, if you see Ken Calvert, ask him when he's going to debate. But the problem is he's never in the district. So it's tough for people to actually find him. And I hope that the press will put some pressure on him too.
Okay. Ellie, then Gerald.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we were able to pressure Mary Bono Baxley McWright, I like all of her husbands, to debate Raul Ruiz in 2012. And we really believe, many of us believe, that watched that debate, that was when he won the election. What we did, and what people can start doing as soon as the primary is over, is start sending letters and making phone calls to his office stating, we want to debate. We are your constituents. When will you? And start putting pressure on him. She did not want to debate Raul, believe me. And it was literally that debate, and I know many of you that watched it, that's when we knew he had won the election. So we can do this, my friends. We can put pressure on him to debate. And if he doesn't, then you get the television time and you have an empty chair.
Yes. I ran for Congress in 2018, and I did that. I had a debate against an empty podium.
And John Ossoff did it against Purdue in the last.
That's right. That's right. I mean, this can be done. We can put pressure on him to debate you. And in fact, you start out by saying you want 3 debates.
Yes.
You don't ask for 1. You start out with the top. You say you want 3 debates. And you've given the dates of when you want them or the months. And you just make it very clear. He'll have no choice if he's embarrassed enough. And you can't just write the Desert Sun, my friends. There's the Press Enterprise. And that is the paper that he reads, believe me. That's how you do it. And we can absolutely bring this thing together. We'll organize out of headquarters and let it be known that he's going to have to meet you face to face on television.
Love it. Love it. Totally agree. And we should probably day 1 of June, June 8th, send out that press release calling for 3 debates.
You've got it. Exactly. Exactly. So sounds like fun to me. Let's have a party.
Gerald, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, the Democratic Party basically is framing that one of the big issues, of course, is the Republican threat to democracy. And I think that it's more effective, well, not only to say that, but to explain, such as abrogating our right to vote, and be specific as to what rights we'll be losing, because democracy is very vague to most people. It is to me too. But if it's framed more specifically that people can understand and relate to, I think that would be more effective. I wonder what you think about that.
I completely agree. And I agree that it's also challenging sometimes to talk about it in a way that is simple, because so much of what we have in the United States, people take for granted. And I think people sometimes forget about just how many people had to die, especially when you think about this on Memorial Day weekend, right? And I think about how incumbent it is on candidates like me and people who, all of us who care about democracy, to stand up together and explain just how crucial it is that we have the freedom to choose our own leaders, right? I mean, something as fundamental as that so many millions of Americans fought and died to give us, that we're now seeing a party seeking to take away our freedom to choose our own leaders away from us. And the people who count the ballots should not be partisan, right? That should be a nonpartisan function, and the people with the best ideas should be the ones who win elections, not the ones who are the biggest bullies with the loudest voices, who are just trying to squash all opposition. And I just completely agree with the idea of trying to remind people just how much is at stake. And also, look, it's like, this is what makes America America. It's about, it should not matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It should be about democracy and the right to choose our own leaders itself when we're talking about it. And I think that that's part of what we're seeing with the Republican Party and 14,000 people leaving it in Southern California. You know, folks who, like, I had friends who are Republicans texting me a change in registration after January 6th, because I think a lot of the vast majority of the American public agrees with these ideas. And we don't want to be in a world where every 4 years there is a dispute about who won the last presidential election. We see the US Capitol being invaded by far right extremists who don't understand what the United States really stands for and what democracy means.
We're at 3 o'clock, but Will, since you, can we have you for a few more minutes?
Yes.
Oh, all right. I'm going to go over our end here. Carlos, your hand is up. If you can unmute yourself, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you. Will, I've been watching your commercials both on Facebook and on television. They're very effective. I'm really, really impressed. They're really solid. I love the tone, but I'm curious about your Spanish language outreach. You're trying to reach out to the Latino community. I hope it's coming along and is going to be at least almost as good, hopefully.
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked that, because we just filmed a Spanish language ad actually a few days ago, and we were originally going to film it a week and a half ago, but I had an issue with my eye that I needed to postpone it. But so we did that on Thursday or Friday of this week, and really happy to have Councilmember Karina Quintanilla help me with it and talked about what I want to do for our communities. And I think it's going to be really effective. And I'm looking forward to rolling that one out. And I know they're doing the post-production on it right now. And so we're hoping it'll be posted online in the next few days.
All right, very good. Anybody else? This is an extraordinary opportunity. Will is here, and anyone else have any questions? I could fill up an hour, but I don't want to monopolize anything. Yes, Mr. Olson, Steve Olson. Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Ken Richard. Just two questions. Where you stand on the issues with healthcare, and also your stance on legalization of marijuana.
Sure. So I favor the legalization of marijuana, and I'll start there to talk a little bit about the crime aspect of this, because when I was a federal prosecutor, some of the cases that our office handled involved violent crimes targeting dispensaries that are cash heavy businesses. And so what's this patchwork of legislative frameworks that we have now at the state and federal level that have prevented businesses that are fully compliant with state law from accessing our national banking system has created incentives for violent crime to target some of those dispensaries. And so not only should we be legalized because it is less harmful than statistically than alcohol is in a lot of ways, and that's been proven repeatedly in study after study, but it's also becoming more dangerous to have a system that forces these businesses into cash heavy enterprises that can be targeted by violent criminal organizations who want to do robberies, right? And so I favor legalizing marijuana. I think it's also a gigantic waste of taxpayer dollars to go after weed, right? I mean, there are so many other places that need federal resources, especially when you look at the complex white collar crimes that involve Wall Street, fraudsters that are very difficult to solve, that are very time intensive, that are underfunded, corruption. I mean, just look at the indictments coming down in Southern California against some of the elected leaders in LA, in Anaheim, reportedly being investigated by the FBI. Those are also labor intensive cases. Look at the rise in domestic terrorism, obviously incredibly painful, horrific reminders of just how prevalent that threat is. That's where our federal Justice Department resources should be spent, not on going after marijuana. And by the way, that's in complete contrast to my opponent, Ken Calvert, who continues to believe that that should be a felony, a federal felony offense. So totally disagree with him on that. Healthcare, I think everybody deserves a base. It's a human right, no question about it. And there absolutely has to be a baseline of coverage for every American in the United States. And if we don't have that baseline of coverage, we end up paying for it anyway, right? And that's the thing that Republicans never want to be honest with the electorate about. It's like when you don't have coverage and you show up to the ER, the public pays for that. And because there is no preventative care, and the problems get worse and worse and worse, and there's not early intervention and early treatment, the costs to the taxpayers end up skyrocketing at the back end anyway. And it's just so counterintuitive and counterproductive for Republicans to continue to argue that the free market is just going to take care of this problem all on its own, when the taxpayers are already getting stuck with astronomical costs on the back end, and our insurance premiums are also going up as a result of our failure to provide a baseline of universal coverage to every American citizen. And I think it is an embarrassment that the wealthiest country on earth does not already have something in place that's designed to give people the human right to healthcare that they absolutely deserve.
Yes, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Garrett from La Quinta. Where do you stand on the Salton Sea? That's something that's going to affect not only the Coachella Valley, but a lot of neighboring areas around Riverside County and even in San Bernardino County.
Yeah, and I was really thrilled to see Secretary Granholm visit the Salton Sea a few weeks ago, or last month, I think. And she was the first cabinet level official of any presidential administration in the history of the United States to visit the Salton Sea. And if we do not take remedial steps to address what's happening in the Salton Sea, it has the potential to become one of the worst natural disasters in the history of California. And so, look, like, it's not just about immediate remediation so that the health effects of those toxins being deployed into the atmosphere, which have effects on the communities that live near the Salton Sea. That's the most urgent threat. So I am committed to partnering with people like Congressman Ruiz and Congressman Takano, who are also, of course, great reps for Riverside County, to try and get the federal resources we need to do the immediate remediation to address some of those health impacts, but also trying to make sure that we have stakeholders at the table when we're looking towards longer term development and environmental impact. Because what we don't want to have happen is massive energy corporations coming into the Salton Sea, extracting lithium, and leaving without any consideration for the communities who are actually living near the Salton Sea or any impact on the environment. Because look, it's very promising that the Salton Sea and the lithium deposits that a lot of folks believe can be used to power our clean tech economy in the 21st century, that's great. But we have to do that in a way that is consistent with our environmental protection efforts, that's consistent in a way that responsibly grows our economy near those communities so that jobs are created here in the Coachella Valley and in the Inland Empire and in Riverside County, not overseas. These aren't outsourced, that it's developed in a way that, you know, also works with unions. And I've talked to some of the unions about this, because project labor agreements where you've got multiple stakeholders at the table, when there's something as big as those projects potentially could involve, it's not just industry on one side talking about how do we exploit this resource to maximize profit. You've also got groups like the Sierra Club at the table who are talking about environmental impact. You've also got local community leaders who are talking about exactly how that development is going to look. What's the impact going to be on traffic? What's the impact going to be on our local communities? And you've got unions at the table too, who are going to ask the tough questions that they should be asking, which is who's going to be getting these jobs and what are those wages going to look like? And so that's kind of my general framework to how I hope to be able to advocate for the Salton Sea when I'm in Congress, and look forward to working with folks like Congressman Ruiz and everybody in the community to try to make sure that it's developed in a responsible and safe way, with a priority on our environment and the people who actually live nearby being safe first and foremost.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, and I don't want to take advantage of Will here. Well, maybe I do, but I won't.
Patrick
So
Weiss has his hand up.
who does? I'm sorry.
Patrick.
Oh,
I have my hand up.
okay, Patrick, you're on my other screen. Yes, all right.
I don't know as a congressman and what you can do about the increase or issues of homelessness in Riverside County. It's a complex problem, and unfortunately sometimes the Republicans use that against Democrats when they're running. As a congressman, what do you feel you can do to decrease the homelessness problem, specifically in Riverside, but it seems to be California in general?
Yeah, I mean, look, and this is an issue that has affected my family personally, historically, and I know a lot of folks have had friends and relatives who struggled with addiction and mental health issues that are so often linked to homelessness. And it's one that Republicans consistently want to treat as a law enforcement problem, as opposed to a public health crisis and public housing problem, right? And so I think the intellectually honest response to that question is, I can try to advocate with the two other Democrats who are in Riverside County to lobby the other members and to get the federal funds needed to help lower prices for homes across the board in Riverside County. And it's really not just about building affordable housing to help folks who are immediately homeless, who urgently need assistance, but it's also about creating more broad patches of affordable housing at multiple income levels to ease the overall burden on the housing market in Riverside County, where, by the way, I think prices are going to soon average the $1 million mark, which we just saw Orange County surpass for the first time in history about a month ago. And so, you know, I want to try to make sure that I am advocating for the resources that are needed to, again, fill that market gap, because real estate developers will always put money into these multi-million-dollar homes that you see in places like Rancho Mirage and Palm Springs, but they will not put the money into affordable housing developments. And I just took a tour of DAP a couple of weeks ago, and something that struck me about that was two things: early intervention and proximity to treatment. You look at other parts of Riverside County that have homelessness issues, and a lot of times what happens is somebody who gets into treatment is not close to affordable housing. And so even if they get into temporary housing, their treatment is an hour bus ride away, or it's an hour walk away. And what I really respect about what DAP has done is put $200 per month affordable housing units next to treatment. And that is life-changing and you can talk to people there about how life-changing that experience has been. And I think if you look at the way that we use federally health qualified centers across Riverside County, and a smart legislator can get in and direct funds and work with local community leaders to say, hey, how can we best pair up these affordable housing dollars to treatment clinics that are nearby? And how can we make sure that we've got early intervention for mental health when that is the most effective and efficient and safest time to intervene? Because you talk to psychiatrists about this, and people who are schizophrenic or who may be suffering from a psychotic break, if you can intervene early, the odds of another break diminished rapidly. And so I think early intervention is another thing that I hope I can be a strong advocate for when I get to Congress, and really look forward to just fighting for those resources, because that is exactly what we need.
Last question, Michelle, you have your hand up, so you win the prize.
And actually, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you, Will, because for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for saying that. And I'm hopeful too. And I look forward to beating this guy in November.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Will. Sorry about the car, but I'm really glad that you made it. And thank you to Matt and to Griffin and everybody who contributed today. This turned out to be a very enlightening and productive meeting. And Will, I'm sure I'll see you soon. And once again, remember all the events. Attorney General Bonta next Tuesday. It's free. If you want to go, just let me know, because they want a head count. But other than that, thank you very much. And unless anyone objects, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.